Digital Romance TV.
Hi there, this is Clay Andrews with Digital Romance TV. I am the world's leading expert in breakups for high achievers, and not many people know this, but I actually have a secret newsletter where I send out tips and tricks to help you get your ex back over at relationshipinnergame.com. And in this short video today, I'm going to be explaining to you the 5 stages of getting back together with your ex that could potentially explain your ex's mysterious mixed messages, why they won't talk to you, and other strange issues that you might be having in your attempts to get back together with your ex. So let's go ahead and get into this. Okay, so in order to understand this, we first need to understand the idea of emotional reactance, okay? So you might not be familiar with the word reactance, but you're probably pretty familiar with the feeling of it, right? It's that feeling that you get when you're sitting at home doing whatever it is that you do at home alone. I see you out there, and somebody rings the doorbell or knocks on the door, and you get up and you go and answer the door, and you open the door, and who do you see? You see a man there ready to sell you a vacuum cleaner, right? You just want to slam the door in his face and run away screaming, right? That's that feeling that you get when you open that door and you see the door-to-door salesman. That is emotional reactance. And for better or worse, that is the feeling that your ex often has towards you after a breakup, okay? So let's kind of break this down a little bit more. So, when you are in a relationship with somebody, you know, you have like a decent amount of positive emotions, right? And then when you go through a breakup, those positive emotions decrease, right? Now, depending on how much they decrease depends on the nature of your breakup and all sorts of factors that I can't just postulate on here in this video, right? It's unique to each situation. But if you had a bad breakup, they might go down all the way to 0, or if you had a reasonably amicable breakup, it may go down to 50% or something like that, right? And so that gap between the 100% full positive emotions and wherever you may end up after the breakup, that gap is the emotional reactance. And depending on how strong or weak that is, you have to be able to close that gap in order to get back together with your ex. And as this gap narrows and as it closes, you will be passing through 5 different stages of getting back together, okay? So let's go ahead and get into these, because I'm sure that these might be a little bit familiar to some of you. So the first stage is called the wall of reactance, okay? This is what happens when the positive feelings go down to, like, you know, almost 0 or maybe even 0, and there's a lot of emotional reactance. There's maybe like 100% emotional reactance, 90% emotional reactance, a very high number. And what happens when you are in this wall of reactance stage is that your ex simply won't talk to you. They won't answer the phone when you call them. They won't respond to your text messages. It's basically like you're just talking to a wall, right? And this is really what's responsible for them not wanting to interact with you. It's this emotional reactance, right? So, you know, you may send them the text message and it has that same feeling of like the door-to-door salesman. They're like, I'm just not gonna respond, you know. I was there during the breakup. They did the whole like begging and pleading thing. They maybe tried to buy me a gift. They tried to guilt me into getting back together. They tried to, you know, do some weird mind game shenanigans or something, and, you know, I could just see right through that. I know where this is going. I'm just not going to get back in touch with them, right? So this is the first stage, right? And so at this stage, what you want to do is you want to slowly whittle away that emotional reactance, okay? You don't want to go for like a big move, like asking them to get back together with you, or anything like asking for commitment of some sort or other at this point. All you simply want to do is get a good positive emotional connection. So how do you do this? You do this by simply sending out small innocuous messages, right? Like, I'm sure you've probably had the experience of being walled out and you feel like you need to like keep trying harder and harder and harder in order to get through to them, right? But it just doesn't work. And oftentimes the types of messages that we would suggest in this particular situation are really innocuous, and oftentimes to the untrained eye, somebody who sees them would be like, really? Like, that would never work. It's It's like, really? No, that's too tame. My ex would never respond to that. And the reason why they will respond to it is because it is so tame. It doesn't come laden with all of these expectations and stuff like that, right? So that is the first stage of getting back together. It's the wall of reactance. And as you start to close in a little bit, and maybe you're 20 to 40% positive feelings, and you have maybe about 80% or less emotional reactance left, you start to get into what we call the test drive stage of getting back together. Now, here your ex isn't totally walling you out like they were in the wall of reactance stage, but they're just kind of like testing the waters. So when you text them, when you email them, when you call them or something like that, they're not really ready to invest fully in a full conversation with you or anything like that. And you might experience getting like one-word responses or short sort of snippy replies and stuff like that. Things like, you might text them like, hey, how's it going? And they respond back with, good. Or like, hey, what have you been up to today? Not much. Just stuff like that, right? There's nothing for you to really like sink your hooks into in order to like pull out a full conversation, a full interaction, right? And this is the characteristic behavior of the test drive stage. And in order to move past this stage, what you want to do is you want to try to take things from the surface level communication down into the emotional level of communication. And in order to do this, you have to change the questions that you're asking your ex. Like instead of like, hey, what happened to you today? You can be like, hey, what's the best thing that happened to you today? Or something like that, where you're shifting the conversation, the level of the conversation down to a much more emotional connection, right? And obviously I don't have time to like go into all of the conversational dynamics and stuff that we talk about over in our special top secret newsletter, but that just kind of gives you the rough idea. And once you pull them down into that deeper emotional level of communication, that's where you can start to rebuild that bond, that connection, talk about some more serious things like your feelings and stuff like that, okay? And because you'll be able to do this in a natural and easy way, you'll be able to move them from the test drive stage up to the next stage, okay? And the third stage in getting back together, this one is called riding the dragon. And this is probably the most tricky and most confusing stage in the whole process, okay? And this happens when your positive feelings for your ex or their emotional reactance are right about 50%, give or take. Maybe as low as 40% emotional reactance or as high as 60% emotional reactance. And at this point, we're right around the midpoint between your ex totally hates your guts and your ex really wants to get back together with you. So interesting things happen at midpoints in a lot of cases in the world. And when it comes to getting back together with your ex, they're kind of like on that teeter-totter, like, right? It's sort of balanced right in the middle, and one grain of sand on one side or the other can kind of tip things one way or another. And because of this dynamic, your ex may give you a lot of mixed messages, a lot of confusing behavior, a lot of hot and cold kind of things, like where they might say one day like, hey, I really miss you, I really still love you, I think we should get back together. And then the next day they say, oh, you know what, I wasn't thinking straight, I think we're better off alone, you should date other people. And then the day after that they say, I'm sorry I said that, I really still care about you, and on it goes, right? If that has ever happened to you before, this is where you are at. And this is why that is happening. It's because the grain of sand is falling on one side or another, right? And so what you want to do in this particular stage is to not get caught up in the whole back and forth jerking of, now it's hot, now it's cold, now it's confusing, now it's crystal clear, and all that back and forth stuff, because your ex is very confused. You are obviously very confused in this situation, but they are even more confused because their emotional state and their emotional opinion of you keeps changing and shifting from one day to the next, from one moment to the next. And in order to kind of help them move from this stage to the fourth stage, you have to really keep that emotional connection that you've started to develop in the test drive stage. You have to keep that emotional connection really strong, really rock solid connected, okay? And what that's going to do is it's going to show them that you are there for them and that you are not going to waver, and that you are 100% there for them on their side, okay? And that's going to get you to the next stage of getting back together, stage number 4. Stage number 4 is called the crisis point, okay? And this is a very, crisis point, sounds kind of scary, right? But it's actually not so bad. In fact, it's actually a good thing. This is when their emotional reactance is down to 40 to 20% left, and they have about 60 to 80% positive feelings for you. And of course, none of this is like scientific. There's no like exometer device that I can like scan your ex with and it'll tell me their emotional state or anything like that. This is just kind of like to help you visualize things, okay? But when you hit the crisis point, what's happened is they're over that 50% hump, and they really like you, so they have majority positive feelings for you. The two of you are connecting pretty well, but there's like one major thing that's keeping the two of you apart, and this could be something logistical, like maybe your ex is in a rebound relationship and they're not really ready to let go of that yet. It could be something related to the breakup, like maybe some circumstance that caused them to break up with you, and they're still not sure if you're able to really change and give them a different relationship than what led to the breakup in the first place. But there's basically, the two of you are connecting pretty well, but there's still that thing going on in the back of their mind that says like, okay, well, I don't know if I'm ready to go all in on this just yet. And what you want to do in this particular situation is to demonstrate to them, not tell, but demonstrate to them that things are going to be different when the two of you get back together, right? So obviously this is why begging and pleading doesn't work, right? You can't say, oh, I promise things are going to be different. I promise I'm going to, get the job or stop cheating or whatever, right? You have to actually demonstrate it to them, okay? Through demonstrable action over a period of consistent time, they will really get that you are committed to them, that you are not going to be the same person that they broke up with in the first place, that they're not going to be walking back into the same relationship that they walked out the door in the first place. And this is going to really kind of help them get over that last final hump of the crisis point. And that'll bring you to the fifth and final stage of getting back together with your ex. This stage is called new beginnings, okay? So here you are at 80 to 100% positive feelings. Your emotional reactance, their emotional reactance rather, towards you is down to 20 to 0%, okay? And again, totally not scientific, just for conceptualization so you can understand this. But at this point, all that's really left to do is for you to have that talk with your ex, for you to just sit down and say, hey, we've been hanging out for a while and I think we've been having a good time. I've been having a good time and it seems to me like you've been having a good time. Why don't we go ahead and get back together again? And you can both kind of spill things out on the table and talk about any last minute hesitations you might have, make plans together on how you can not fall into the same problems that you had in your relationship in the first place, and all that kind of thing. And this is where the whole commitment collaboration process comes into play, where you can actually work together with your ex to create a new, stronger, better relationship than you had in the first place. But you do not want to talk about getting back together with your ex. You do not want to bring up the subject of getting back together with your ex until you have come all through these other 5 stages to the point where you are at the new beginning stage. This is super important. I do not want to hear any of you talking about like, hey, I was totally in wall of reactance and I asked my ex to get back together. Why did he or she say no? I mean, you weren't ready, right? The reactance was too high. They were not ready to talk about it. So these have been the 5 stages of getting back together that I have helped people with for the past several years, actually, professionally for most of my time. And if you'd like to learn more about how to sort of move through these 5 stages, more about the hurdles and obstacles that you might experience in these 5 stages, and more about how you can actually help your ex through these stages so that you can get back together with them, then here's all you need to do. You just need to go over to my website, relationshipinnergame.com, and sign up for the top secret newsletter, where I can start sending you advice and tips and little nuggets of wisdom that'll help you make progress with your ex. So again, this has been Clay Andrews with Digital Romance TV, and I will talk to you next time.
If you and your ex-boyfriend or ex-girlfriend broke up and you want them back, put the cell phone down right now and go to digitalromance.tv/TXB. At that link, you'll find a special video I put together that teaches you the exact text to send to your ex to make him or her forgive you for everything. Remember how great your relationship used to be and even beg to have you back. Again, that URL is digitalromance.tv/TXB.